First of all, I'd like to tell you the disclaimer. I'm not an MD. My last exposure to science, like a course on chemistry, was in high school. So the question is, what am I doing here? Well, about a year and a half ago, I attended your convention in Las Vegas, and I started seeing some very interesting parallels between what is done medically for anti-aging and what they do in organizations to debureaucratize them. So I did first lecture in Las Vegas, and I was invited to come to present to you. I do have certain qualifications, I might say, as you can see on the screen, so I'm not coming without anything. I would not talk at all about your field. My goal is to talk about my field, and hopefully you can make a transition yourself and see what is parallel and what can be learned by crossing disciplines. And I would also appreciate if any of you has some insights, you do send me some material so we can start talking, or I can learn from each other. Here is what I found, is that organizations, not only trees and not only human beings, have a life cycle. They are born, they grow, age, and die. And I found out that at every stage of the life cycle, they have typical problems which are what's called in psychology age appropriate. Or they might have abnormal problems, or they might have fatal problems that might cause them to die. And once you understand the model, what happens at every stage of the life cycle, you can do a better diagnosis of an organization and see whether it's going to advance or not advance. And let me just go very fast over the different characteristics of every stage of the life cycle, what's normal, what's not normal, and then talk about aging of organizations and how to rejuvenate them, which is anti-aging. Well, the first stage of the life cycle is, I call it courtship. The organization is not born yet. We are dreaming about something. And the most important characteristic at that stage is a lot of excitement. People are very excited. What's happening there, the organization is building commitment. And what happens when the commitment evaporates, the organization will die. So they're building like this bank account. Eventually, the organization is born when risk is taken. Now that the risk is taken, the organization is born. How much commitment you need is parallel to how much risk you're going to take. Some organizations try to be born with low commitment, high risk. It does not work. The commitment has to be commensurate to the risk which is going to be undertaken. What happens in infant organization? Lots of doing, hard work, lots of crisis, like a baby being born, cries all night long. Eventually it settles down. And what does it mean settles down? The trauma of birth settles down. The organization has repetitive clients, has repetitive, the cash flow is positive. They open their eyes, like a baby opens its eyes, and it goes to the next stage, go. Like a baby that starts crawling, the organization starts going in many directions at the same time, or like a bush starts in the spring, goes in many directions at the same time. It's very exciting, the time of exploring. And eventually the organization will get into trouble. Why? Because it overexplores. It overspreads itself, like the space syndrome, expanding on the margin, collapsing at the core. It doesn't have the good foundation sufficiently. Organizations should not grow like this, because if they grow like this, they go down. They should grow, and then they should reinforce the foundations, grow, reinforce the foundations. Since they don't reinforce the foundations, you get into trouble, and here starts the fighting. Usually the founder gets kicked out, the professional manager takes over, and the genius of the past becomes the unguided missile of the future. It becomes a trouble sign, and they usually kick him out, like it happened to Steve Jobs and Apple and others. If you overcome this stage, you get to prime of the life cycle. From there on, it starts going down. Now, why is prime here and not here? Many people ask me. The reason is here you still have vitality. There is still vitality. You're still growing. Something is still happening. From here on, there is only one way, down. Organization kind of starts learning, living on the laurels of the past, and then it gets into trouble because it has not innovated, it has not improved, and the organization loses its vision, loses its horizon, and eventually gets into trouble, and then they start fighting each other, downsizing, killing each other, quote unquote. And if it survives, it usually is taken over, becomes bureaucracy, and then when it's a subsidiary, the subsidy from the outside is removed, the organization dies. What's happening here? What the heck is happening here? What determines where you are in the life cycle as an organization, and I have seen this application in personal life, is not chronological age. I had clients which were 108 years young, and I had organizations that were 5 years old. And it's not also size. Usually they say, well, if you're in a very large organization, you're bureaucratic. Not true. What causes where you are in the life cycle? I found out 2 factors. Factor number 1 is flexibility. Look at a baby, it can put its foot in its mouth, but the time you get to my age, when you bend, you stay there for several hours. You cannot move anymore. So something happens here. We lose flexibility as we age. There is another factor, and it is the controllability. If you look at a little baby, it cannot control its outflows. It cannot control how it walks, it falls. We develop control of our body, then we control our mind. Eventually, we start controlling our emotions. What's happening? Control goes up, and then for different reasons, which I have no time now to explain, but we could, it goes down. When the 2 curves meet, you're dead. There is no more control, there is no more flexibility, the organization is gone. However, when the organization the 2 curves meet the first time, you're in the prime of your life. And please realize, from here to here you're growing. From here to here you're aging as an organization. And from here to here you're dying.